GodLogic lied about the disciples of Jesus. Recently, there was a debate between GodLogic and Muslim apologist Dean Response. In that debate, GodLogic claimed all the disciples of Jesus and their belief contradict the teachings of Prophet Muhammad himself. However, is this claim true? In this video, I investigated this claim and what I found could destroy the belief of all Christians. But what could destroy the belief of all Christians? If you want to know, then please watch this video until the very end. So, let's get started.
By the way, so according to Bart Ehrman, did the disciples believe that Jesus was crucified?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, so they believed that Jesus was crucified and they believed that God raised him from the dead. Interesting. So your stance was that whatever doesn't go with historically, the secular historical view of what the disciples believed and taught, then that means that person would be a false messenger. According to the secular historians, well, one of them at least, they say clearly that the disciples believed that Jesus rose again on the third, that Jesus rose from the dead. So by your standard, Muhammad's already out. Paul's in right now.
Again, he's committing the strawman argument fallacy. He's completely strawmanning Bart Ehrman. Obviously, Bart Ehrman is not saying that the disciples believe Jesus was raised from the dead. He has a whole lecture series proving that some of the disciples actually didn't believe it.
Did all of Jesus' disciples believe in the resurrection? Some of the disciples never were fully convinced, and that they, possibly a few of them, never did come to believe.
According to the secular historians, well, one of them at least, they say clearly that the disciples believed that Jesus rose from the dead.
Some of the disciples never did come to believe.
His whole argument collapsed by his own reference of Bart Ehrman.
Muhammad's already out. Paul's in right now.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
There's no evidence that the disciples actually saw the crucifixion happen. I have a special guest, which is Brother MNJ. He basically has something very interesting to say, which is that...
And for me personally, I, of course, do not believe that the disciples witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus. In fact, in the Bible itself, it says that the disciples ran off when the Romans came to arrest Jesus. So who was actually witness to the alleged crucifixion of Jesus? The answer is no one, because they all ran off.
And he provided us in this video no evidence that the disciples actually saw the crucifixion happening. They heard it from other people, but they didn't actually see it happening, right? By the way, just to explain to you guys how much of a liar and charlatan this GodLogic is, did you notice how he started the conversation by asking Brother Dean about crucifixion and if Bart Ehrman believes that disciples believed in the crucifixion?
By the way, so according to Bart Ehrman, did the disciples believe that Jesus was crucified?
And he answered yes.
Yeah, they did.
And then later on adds the resurrection on top of it.
They believed that Jesus was crucified and they believed that God raised him from the dead. Interesting.
And I think Brother Dean didn't realize this, but he completely deceived him because the resurrection has nothing to do with crucifixion.
Wait a minute!
Even if it was true that the disciples believed in crucifixion, that doesn't mean they believed in the resurrection. It doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur. And he lied to his audience because Brother Dean never agreed or said that Bart Ehrman thinks that the disciples believe in the resurrection. In the clip that he chose, he's trying to make it seem like he is agreeing to that, but he's not agreeing to that. So this is a complete lie. He clearly manipulated his audience here. So you guys can clearly see this guy's a complete fraud. And this is why I often advise people to not debate people like GodLogic, because these people don't care about integrity. They don't care about the truth. They just want to debate people to make themselves look good and get views. And this clearly shows. I mean, this video clearly exposes him.
But let's keep reading.
No, yeah, okay. So allow me to respond to that if you're going to make a claim. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so the idea of Jesus being crucified, that's fine. There's no problem believing that. And if the disciples did come to believe that
Okay, so here I think Brother Dean actually made a mistake here. No, this is not the Islamic position to say that the disciples believe that Jesus died. That's not our position. What we believe, or at least according to most Mufassirun, the idea here is that someone else was made to look like Jesus, and the disciples knew about it. If you read Ibn Kathir or Tabari, they mention this, right? They mention this kind of like Hadith, although I don't know whether the Hadith is authentic or not. But many of the Mufassirun actually does kind of like add this Hadith. There may be some validity there. At least the mainstream position was that the disciples knew and someone volunteered, one of the disciples, and he was the one who was crucified. The another opinion is that there was some confusion regarding who actually died. but it wasn't Jesus. Our position is not that the disciples actually believed in something false.
Yeah,
Because you said that the disciples, you said the
No.
disciples to go against them, what they taught and believed, you said to go against them would make you a false messenger. That's what you said.
Yeah,
So Muhammad is a false
the,
messenger
yeah,
for going
go
against
ahead.
the crucifixion of Jesus, which the disciples believe.
Yeah, in
Now-
terms of theological,
That's
belief.
theological.
Yeah,
What are you
wait,
talking
one
about?
second.
Even if I were to accept that, okay, actually Bart Ehrman does believe that all the disciples believed, that would still be a logical fallacy known as the appeal to authority. Appeal to authority is basically a logical fallacy where you appeal to authority without any other justification. But it doesn't follow because what makes you think the authority is correct, right? Like, for example, like imagine if I said, oh, the president of this country says brown chocolates are good, right? But it doesn't follow. Like, just because the president says it doesn't make it correct, you know? This is why simply quoting an authority is not enough to prove your point, right? Like, what's the evidence that the authority is using to prove his case? Like, that's what you have to show. So even if I were to accept that, oh, you know, he does believe this, it would still be a fallacy. And let's say that actually, you know what, all the disciples actually did believe this, right? Actually, they actually did believe he was crucified and he was resurrected. Does this make Prophet Salam a false prophet? The answer is no. Like, even then, it doesn't help him, right? Because even if the disciples had some false belief, it doesn't take them out of the fold of Islam, right? Because whether or not a prophet of God, because remember, he did not establish that the disciples believed him to be God or they believed in the Trinity. He never established this in this debate. So even if a prophet of God was crucified and then God again resurrected him, that doesn't affect their belief that there's only one God and their belief that Isa was his prophet. Okay, it doesn't affect it at all. Sure, they have a deviant belief in terms of very minor detail of the theology, or sorry, should I say, they have a false belief or wrong belief about a historical information. But that doesn't mean they have the wrong belief about the theology, which is why they can still be Muslim, right? It doesn't contradict their belief as Muslims. I mean, there are Muslim scholars who disagree about what is the date of birth about Prophet Salam, or like when, or even things like age of the marriage age of Aisha, right? Some scholars disagree about that, right? But that doesn't mean they're not all of a sudden not Muslim, because in terms of their theology, they're still correct. They're just disagreeing about history. Now, history is part of theology, but it's not part of theology in the sense that it's going to take you out of the fold of Islam. That's not how this works. So this moron clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just waffling, and it's just absolutely embarrassing to see because his audience doesn't see this. His audience thinks he's a genius. And we know that Allah will clarify to different Christian groups about who is correct. He will ask Jesus directly if they claim to be gods, and he will debunk them, right? So it's not an issue for us. Like, what argument does he have here exactly? Because obviously when Brother Dean says that if anyone contradicts the disciples, they're in the wrong, anything that the disciples believed that was actually taught by Jesus is what he means, right? That was his argument. But he then completely kind of like twists that and strawmans his position and says that, and tries to make it seem like he's saying that, oh, you know, anything that the disciple says is kind of like canon, right? Obviously, that's not what he's saying. So this is a clear-cut straw man.
Let's keep reading, because now we're discovering your lie about what you said about Bart Ehrman. So it says here, the crucifixion would have proved beyond a doubt that anyone claims that he wasn't the Messiah. After all, rather than overcoming the enemy to establish a new kingdom, he was squashed by the enemy, publicly humiliated and tortured to death. That was the opposite of what would happen with the Messiah. But then something equally dramatic happened. The disciples came to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. They started working out the implications of that belief for understanding Jesus. And it led over a long series of reflections among a number of Jesus' growing band of followers to rather amazing conclusions. It is in fact...
Obviously, Bart Ehrman is using mythology to do his analysis. He doesn't believe in any of these stories. He's an atheist, dude.
The Gospels are our sources for knowing about the resurrection of Jesus. Are they the kind of sources that historians would want when trying to establish what probably happened in the past? I think the answer to that question is no.
You are made of stupid.
And also, I want to thank Brother Emi for joining me in this video. If you guys like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time.